My name is Lucinda George, and I'm 35 years old. If you walked into my kitchen the night everything started, you'd hear the kind of quiet that only comes after long days. Compressor hiss still ringing in my ears. Denim stiff with dust. A lunchbox that smelled faintly of oranges and cedar. I stood at the sink, rubbing grit from my palms and trying to pretend the soap could cut through what was pressing on my chest. Marcus sat at the table like he was waiting for a meeting to start. He'd dressed up for the conversation. Fresh shirt, new watch that caught the light when he reached for his glass. He works admin at an insurance company downtown, which means he's good with paperwork and better with presentations. He smiled a practiced, sympathetic smile and said the sentence that made the air too tight to breathe. Lou, I think we should make a clean split. Not a fight, not a question, a slide title. He slid a folder across the table, a templated agreement, tidy bullet points, highlighted lines. No need to drag this out, he said. You keep the house. No debts. We each take what's ours. We can be mature. Mature, like I was a leaking pipe he'd decided to cap. We can talk, I said, and my voice surprised me by staying calm. Where is this coming from? He shrugged, eyes soft with the kind of pity that makes you feel smaller than you are. We've grown apart. You're comfortable with your life. I want more. It doesn't have to be ugly. I looked down at the agreement again, at the letterhead. That's when I noticed the name at the bottom right corner, Robert Fleming, Esquire. The kind of attorney who sells his time at $500 an hour and never discounts for early payment. Who's paying Fleming? I asked. You don't need to worry about that. He smiled, soothing. This is better for both of us. Better for both of us. Strange how his better always came with a timeline I didn't set. I build things for a living. I know when a wall is plumb by the way the bubble hesitates in the vial. I know when a joint will split before it does. Something about Marcus wasn't lining up. Too confident, too rehearsed, like a man who'd already practiced his victory speech. Yes, I said, it's very efficient. He brightened. Exactly. The small things started to knock loose in my mind. New shoes, car detailed for the first time since I've known him. Coffee orders that suddenly involved half a dozen add-ons. Drinks with friends I'd never met. An ease in his shoulders like money had found him in the dark and took his hand. We weren't rich. Between my foreman's wages and his admin salary, we paid our bills and argued about fancy olives. That was our speed. Why the rush? I asked. He didn't flinch. No rush, just clarity. Clarity doesn't hire Fleming. I cyanidized nothing. After he left, he took the folder with him, which told me more than the folder did. I called my cousin, who gave me a name and a warning. The name, Patricia Gonzalez. The warning, she won't just fight for you, she'll go for the rot. Patricia didn't waste niceties. She listened to me lay out the facts while she scribbled the timeline in a sharp, slanted hand. You were never married, but long-term cohabitation and fiduciary behaviors matter, she said. If there are concealed assets tied to you both, things you played together, expectations built together, we pursue a constructive trust. If he swore to anything he knew was false, we go after perjury implications where applicable. Either way, we don't blink. I told her about Fleming, about the watch, about better for both of us. Then he's in a hurry because he's afraid of the light, she said. Document everything, every text, every receipt, every girlfriend's night. I'll file discovery motions that make him sweat. The next week came at me in fragments. Marcus texting in softened commands. Let's keep it amicable. New cologne I hadn't bought. A change in his vocabulary. Vision, trajectory, freedom. Words that sounded like someone else's mouth. At the sight, I snapped chalk lines and kept missing center. My crew noticed. You good, Lou? Tommy asked, nudging a stack of studs with his boot. I nodded and lied, because that's what you do when the roof is half on and there's rain in the forecast. Patricia kept calling theories. 2 possibilities, she said over the phone. Affair or money. Often both. Nobody dissolves a life this cleanly without a cushion to land on. I cleaned the kitchen at midnight like I could scrub an answer from the grout. When I was done, the house held that strange, tentative peace, like a place trying to remember who it was for. Marcus had been working late, again. I stared at the shared laptop we kept on the counter. I didn't go looking for blood. I went looking for sense. The browser opened on a news tab. I clicked history. The list unspooled. How to keep assets separate during breakup. Gift versus marital property, Illinois. Fastest separation agreements, how to hide windfall from partner. The words blurred, then snapped into focus one by one like studs catching light through a framing gap. I took screenshots. Patricia had told me to. Don't editorialize, she said. Just preserve. Back button. Back. Another tab. Photos of Tessa Lynn. The caption on one image showed my boyfriend in the background of a team lunch at their office, his head tipped toward a woman with a smile, like she knew where every camera was. Tessa, the one he used to talk about as a friend from before. The kind of before some people never leave. My lungs forgot their job. I clicked out, hands trembling over the trackpad. I told myself not to open his email. I opened his email. Shared computer, shared life, shared lies. Subject lines stacked like a staged house's fake books. Can't wait to see you in the plans. Once it clears, we're gone. Timeline for early Nov. Be mature. Tessa's sign-off was a tiny heart he would have said he hated. I clicked one from October 25th. Marcus, he's so trusting. It's almost sad. Early November, we'll wrap this. I told you. Clean, fast, generous. He'll sign. Then we can be who we're meant to be. He. Tessa had written he. The room tilted. Tessa wasn't just a colleague. She was the ex-girlfriend he'd once sworn was ancient history. History never stays in the past when you're feeding it. More messages, pictures from a weekend he told me was Springfield with Rick, a boutique hotel that had never heard of Rick, a selfie in a mirror I'd never stood in front of, jokes about my work clothes and how I'd never understand their dreams, like dreams required dress codes. I heard myself say okay out loud to no one, okay as in noted, okay as in I see you. I took the screenshots, saved them, emailed them to Patricia with a subject line that said nothing more than docs. She called 3 minutes later. Good, she said, voice level. Now we subpoena the rest. And Lou, this still reads like there's fuel we haven't found. Fuel? My voice came out ragged. Money, she said. Affairs are a match. But this? The confidence? The schedule? A $500 lawyer for a boyfriend who bills admin hours? That's a bonfire. I hung up and stared at the ceiling until my eyes burned. Then I wiped the counters I'd already cleaned and put on a kettle I didn't want. The house made that settling sound it makes when the night finally remembers to hold itself together. At noon the next day, I swung by the house between site visits to grab my rain jacket. On instinct, or maybe it was Patricia's voice in my head, I checked the mailbox Marcus always grabbed first. Bills, a flyer, and one envelope that felt heavier than paper. The return address said Illinois Lottery, addressed to Marcus L., and a surname I hadn't seen since the year he told me he was finally done with his father's name. Official. Bar-coded. Dated October 17th. For a long time, the only thing I could hear was the kettle I'd left ringing in my head. I broke the seal with a thumbnail still stained with primer. Congratulations on your recent prize claim. This letter confirms your prize claim of $9,000 has been processed. The numbers were printed underneath. Birthdays, his mother's, mine, our anniversary date. Numbers we had played, together, every week, like a superstition we both agreed didn't hurt anyone. He won with our history, and then he tried to cut me out of it like I was wrought in a beam he'd rather replace than repair. My hand steadied in a way that scared me. I took a photo of the letter, front and back. I texted Patricia the image. 10 seconds. Then my phone rang. Emergency hearing, she said. We move now. I slid the letter back into the envelope like it could still pretend to be unopened, and the house finally went quiet the way a storm does right before the first thunder. Okay, I said again, and this time the word meant something else. It meant swing the hammer, find the studs, take the wall down clean. I didn't sleep that night. The letter lay flat on the kitchen table like a bright, honest wound. $9 million. Our numbers, his mother's birthday, my birthday, and the date we promised each other we were a team, even when money was thin and the sink leaked for a month because we did the labor ourselves. I kept thinking about the rhythm of us at the corner store, me calling out the sequence while he filled the little ovals, him joking that if we ever did win, we'd build the addition with a ridiculous pantry and a skylight over the laundry room, so socks had something to aspire to. He won, and then he hired a lawyer to make sure I never saw daylight. Patricia didn't raise her voice. It just felt like she did, because the air went sharp when she spoke. Listen carefully, Lou. You're going to breathe and follow instructions. She laid it out on the phone in trimmed, precise steps. I was to scan every page of the letter, front and back, including barcodes and timestamp, preserve the envelope, photograph it beside that day's mail as context, text her, then lock the originals in a Ziploc under my sink until pickup. Under your sink? I asked. People steal from drawers, less often from sulfur-smelling pipes, she said. Now, date stamp your photos. Forward copies to my secure email. And Lou, no confrontation yet. Give me 24 hours. I promised. Then I broke the promise. Marcus came home late, smelling like mint and victory. He froze when he saw the open envelope on the table and my hands clean of sawdust for once. I'd scrubbed until my knuckles stung. Maybe I wanted to look like something new for the moment I stopped being the old thing. Congratulations, I said, my voice barely carried. 9 million. He opened his mouth, closed it. I watched him pick a version of himself to be. He chose soft-eyed, humble liar. Lou, You used our numbers, I said. Our anniversary date. You claimed the prize on October 17th. You filed separation papers 2 weeks after. You hired Fleming, you told me we could stay mature, and you asked me to keep the house like it was a consolation prize. I panicked, he said, sitting, hands spread like he'd surrender if I asked nicely. I wanted to protect us. Protect us from $9 million? Protect you, he corrected gently, like I was a high-strung animal. You hate change. Money like that, it would distort everything. You told me that. We'd have people crawling out of the woodwork. I thought, if I took the heat, handled it, and we separated cleanly, I could still take care of you, quietly. Quietly, I repeated. Like a truck? He blinked. A truck? A new one. Reliable. Maybe a bow on top. The burn in my throat was so clean it felt like clarity. You were going to steal the life we built and buy me a vehicle with my half. Don't be dramatic, he said. And there it was, the real mouth under the practiced one. I'm offering you stability. The house. No debt. That's what you like. You told Tessa I'd sign anything, I said. He flinched. Just a flick, but enough to make me feel that out-of-level tilt again. You were reading my... That's not Lou. You're invading my privacy. Your privacy hired a $500 lawyer and gave him a head start, I said. Your privacy put my birthday on a lottery ticket and told a woman who isn't me that once it clears, you two are gone. He looked at the envelope, then at me. His eyes hardened by degrees, like a dimmer switch going down. If you're going to make this ugly, it gets ugly for you too, he said. You want to drag your name through court? You think the world is going to be on your side when I tell them you were always satisfied being small? That you never wanted more? Small. There it was again. His favorite insult, dressed as concern. I don't mind a small house, I said, but I don't live small. He pushed back from the table. Early November, he said to himself, as if checking a calendar box. This was supposed to be clean. What happens in early November? I asked. He swallowed, and the answer sat in his throat like a coin he couldn't spit out. Nothing you need to worry about. I imagined the list Patricia had started to sketch. Affair in August, research in September, prize on October 17th, clean split papers in early November. A timeline that clicked like a ratchet you couldn't back off from once it locked. My phone buzzed. Patricia, do not escalate. I'm drafting an emergency motion. 9 a.m. Tomorrow, pack any essentials you need tonight and do not leave the letter unattended. Also, screenshot, then log out. I tucked the phone away. You should go, I said. I have an early pour. I live here, he said. For now. For now, I repeated. Patricia Gonzalez says otherwise. The name made him still. He laughed like it was a joke he could fix by not laughing. You don't want to do this, he said. You already did, I said. He went to the bedroom and started yanking drawers open like I was hiding his excuses beneath my shirts. The urge to throw something rose and fell. I let it go past me like a wave that isn't mine and started gathering my essentials. Work boots, spare jeans, my father's hammer, the blue binder where I kept warranty paperwork and photocopies of everything we paid for together. On instinct, I grabbed the little spiral notebook, where, for years, we kept our lottery numbers, dates inked in my handwriting, the set never changing. The page for October had my initials beside the sequence because I'd run into the store alone that week. He came back down with a duffel. I'll be at tea, he cut himself off, at a friend's. Say her name, I said, tired to the bone. Say Tessa's name in my kitchen. He didn't. He left. The door closed quietly, the way a good door does. The quiet afterward wasn't peace, it was a vacuum. I packed the letter under the sink where Patricia told me to. I took more photos than she asked for, angles that would make a carpenter proud, timestamp strips visible. Then I sat at the table and wrote a list the way I do before a complicated teardown. What stays? What goes? What reveals rot? What stayed, the house deed with both our names, receipts from renovations, the spiral notebook with our numbers in my pen, all the texts where Marcus called it our little ritual. What went? His toothbrush, his cologne, his hold on how I tell this story to myself. What revealed rot? The emails where he mocked the dirt under my nails to impress someone who didn't know the cost of clean. I woke before the alarm, dressed before the light. The site didn't need me. I needed the site. I told Tommy I had a legal morning, and he kissed his knuckles and tapped them to my shoulder like a benediction. Bring the hammer you don't mind losing, he said. Patricia met me at her office in a navy suit that looked like it could cut water. She had a stack of printed screenshots, the lottery letter at the top in a plastic sleeve, and a calm so disciplined it felt like a weapon. We're filing an emergency motion for an asset freeze and sanctions for concealment, she said. We'll argue constructive trust. The numbers are an expectancy you built together. The purchase practice was joint, and the intent to share was evidenced by years of routine. We'll tie the concealment to bad faith in the separation process and to perjury implications if he swore on any financial disclosures. Is there a photo of him buying tickets with you? Dozens, I said, and the notebook. My initials on the October week. Good, she said. Judge is like paper that behaves. I told her about the confrontation, the truck, the protecting me, the early November. She wrote the words early November in block caps at the bottom of the timeline. That's when he expected the prize disbursement to clear to an accessible account, she said. He wanted you gone before he moved it. Can he move it? I asked. If we get the freeze, he'll have to ask permission to pay for toothpaste. Patricia's mouth twitched. Not a smile. Something uglier and more honest than that. At 9 sharp, we walked into the courthouse's cold light. Marble, echoes, a history of people who thought they could lie louder than the truth. Fleming was already there with Marcus. Fleming looked polished and annoyed. Marcus looked like a boy, rehearsing innocence in a men's suit. Fleming approached. Patricia, he said in that way men say your name like a sport. This emergency motion is unnecessary. My client is prepared to be generous. Generosity is for birthdays, Patricia said. We're asking for the law. Marcus cut in. Lou, we can do this privately. We don't need to. Say mature one more time, I said softly, and see if the word still fits in your mouth. The clerk called us in. The plaque beside the door read Harris. Inside, the courtroom felt like a stripped room before finish work, bare, unforgiving, honest. Judge Harris took the bench with the grave efficiency of someone who knows how to find the load-bearing lies in a structure. She didn't look at anyone long enough to give them hope. Gonzalez, she said. Patricia stepped forward, professional respect wrapped in steel. She laid it out in 7 sentences that belonged in a textbook, the relationship context, the long-standing joint practice of playing the same lottery numbers, the October 17th claim under a former surname, the immediate filing of a clean split, the omission of the prize from any disclosures, the emails mocking me and setting a November timeline, the risk of dissipation. Then she handed up the letter in plastic and the spiral notebook, open to October with my initials. Fleming argued overwhelm, confusion, privacy. Judge Harris's eyebrows never moved. Mr. Hale, she said at last, did you win a $9 million lottery prize on October 17th using numbers tied to Ms. George's birthday and your shared anniversary? Marcus's throat worked. Yes, Your Honor, he said carefully, but... Did you disclose this windfall in any documents filed with this court? He glanced at Fleming. I intended to handle it responsibly. Did you disclose it? She repeated. No, he said. The silence was the exact size of a nail, sinking cleanly with one strike. Judge Harris turned to Patricia. Emergency freeze granted. All accounts, all instruments, all transfers. Mr. Hale is enjoined from moving, encumbering, or otherwise disposing of any portion of the prize. We'll set an evidentiary hearing on the constructive trust and sanctions. Then she looked at me, one brief, human second that felt like a hand at the small of my back, steadying. Ms. George, bring every scrap of documentation, she said. Judges like paper that behaves. I almost smiled. Patricia didn't. She had another motion in her hand already. We stepped back into the hall where the fluorescent lights made everyone look more honest than they wanted to be. Marcus tried to speak. Fleming touched his elbow, a warning. Patricia slid the sleeve with the letter back into her folder and exhaled like a diver up from a long, dark swim. "This is where the real work starts," she said. I nodded. I knew that rhythm. Framing before finish. Structure before paint. Truth before any story you tell about it. Outside, the morning air smelled like cold metal and new possibility. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Tommy, asking if I wanted the crew to come by and move the heavy stuff. I texted back, "Soon. First we make it safe." Tessa walked past us then, quick and bright, like a mistake in a sequined dress. She didn't see me, or she pretended not to. She touched Marcus's arm and he didn't look at her. It was a small thing, quiet. But some quiets are the sound of something finally starting to break in the right direction. "Early November," Patricia murmured, looking at her calendar. "Let's see whose timeline actually runs this place." The hearing was just the beginning. Patricia warned me, asset freezes are a bandage, not a cure. He'll try to slip through the stitches. She was right. Over the next week, Marcus sent messages that read like rewrites of history. We both needed space. It was never about money. You misunderstood what Tessa and I were building. Each text arrived between fragments of new evidence, transfers, small withdrawals, payments to accounts I didn't recognize. Patricia's paralegal traced one to a prepaid card connected to a travel booking site. "He's moving fast," she said. "He thinks if he fractures the trail into pieces, we won't see the pattern." But I build frames for a living. Patterns are my language. I spent my nights in the half-finished guest room, laptop open, drywall dust glowing in the lamplight, documenting everything. Screenshots, receipts, bank alerts. I felt like I was mapping rot under a perfect coat of paint. Each click, a new soft spot. Every time I thought of the winning numbers, my chest ached. Not because of the money, but because of what they meant. Those numbers were us, the dates we called lucky long before we knew they'd destroy us. When I'd chosen them years ago, Marcus had laughed. "Babe, you can't build luck out of calendar math." "Maybe not," I'd said, "but you can build memory." He used those same memories to erase me. On the third morning after the freeze, Patricia called. "He's fighting the motion. Fleming's claiming misunderstanding says the ticket was purchased independently." I stared at the notebook where my handwriting still looped around the sequence. My penmanship wasn't neat, but it was mine. We both bought tickets every week. Sometimes I filled out the slip. Sometimes he did. It was routine. "Perfect," Patricia said. "Routine means pattern. Pattern means shared intent." I heard typing, the steady rhythm of someone hammering nails into a structure that would hold. "Be ready," she said. "We're back in front of Judge Harris tomorrow. Bring the original spiral notebook, photos, texts, anything that shows continuity." "Patricia," I said quietly, "he told me he was protecting me, that the money would ruin us." She paused, then said, "People always claim they're protecting what they're stealing." That night, I went back to the house to grab a jacket and ended up walking room to room like I was seeing a crime scene I'd once lived in. The closet where we hid Christmas gifts. The pantry he'd joked was too small for $1 million life. The counter where I used to scribble numbers on a napkin before walking to the store. Everything looked ordinary, but the ordinary had teeth now. When I opened the mailbox, more letters were waiting. One from the Illinois Lottery Tax Division, another from Robert Fleming's office, and a final one from a credit union I didn't recognize. The tax letter confirmed what Patricia had guessed. The prize disbursement had been processed and was held in Marcus's name pending clearance to a trust account. The trust name stopped me cold. The TL Foundation. TL, Tessa Lynn. He hadn't even tried to hide it. I took photos and sent them to Patricia immediately. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. "He created a trust under his girlfriend's initials," she said, almost laughing at the audacity. "That's textbook fraud. He's making my job easy." "He always liked making things efficient," I said. The next morning, the courthouse smelled of fresh coffee and tension. Judge Harris looked even sterner than before. Fleming tried charm first, then logic. Neither worked. "Your Honor," he said, "my client purchased the ticket individually. Ms. George may have coincidentally chosen similar numbers." "Coincidentally?" Patricia interrupted. "For 7 consecutive years?" Judge Harris raised a hand. "Mr. Hale, who filled out the ticket?" Marcus's mouth opened, closed, then opened again. "Sometimes she did, sometimes I did," he muttered. "Then this court recognizes a joint expectation," Harris said, scribbling notes. "Continue." Patricia held up the spiral notebook and the October entry. These numbers match the winning sequence. Her initials appear beside them. The Illinois Lottery's public record lists Mr. Hale's claim date as October 17th. The same day, Ms. George's text history shows she sent him, quote, "Don't forget to play our set before 5." She projected the screenshot onto the screen. The timestamp glowed like a brand. Judge Harris leaned back. That message was sent at 3:12 p.m. Mr. Hale, the ticket claim was logged at 3:46 p.m. Would you like to amend your statement? Marcus's silence was its own confession. When Harris finally spoke, her tone had cooled into something surgical. We'll proceed to discovery and sanctions. Ms. Gonzalez, submit your proposed findings. Patricia nodded. Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Hale, the judge said, I suggest you remember that perjury doesn't vanish with a change of attorney. The gavel struck once. Outside, Marcus caught up to me. Lou, please. I didn't know how to tell you. You've never handled pressure well. I turned to him slowly. Pressure builds when you close every vent. You did that. He tried again, softer. I was scared. So was I said. Difference is, I didn't lie about it. He stepped back then, that flicker of embarrassment turning to anger. You're going to ruin me. You did that yourself, I said. I'm just the one filing paperwork. That evening, Patricia called again. Good news, she said. Judge Harris wants a full evidentiary hearing next week. She's fast-tracking it. That's bad for him. Good for us. Fast-tracking why, I asked. Because she smells blood. Fraud that obvious insults the court. I sat on the porch steps, the wind cutting through the framing of the half-built sunroom. Marcus once said he'd finish when we could afford better materials. I looked at the city lights, small and far, like ideas that used to matter. What happens next? I asked. Next, Patricia said, we show everyone what happens when someone tries to hide a fortune built on a lie. We'll win the majority, 75, maybe 80%, maybe more. But Lou, I want you prepared for how it feels when justice hits. It's not joy, it's gravity. She was right again, because that night, for the first time since the letter, I felt the weight of what was coming. Not just the money, but the reckoning. The kind of silence that doesn't calm you. It hums, deep and endless, like the pause before a beam splits. The next morning, Tommy dropped off coffee and a single sentence written on the lid in Sharpie. Measure twice, cut once. He didn't need to say more. I thought about all the measuring I'd done. Trust, years, promises, love. Every time I'd cut too short. Now it was Marcus's turn to stand still while I measured him. The courthouse smelled like dust and anxiety. Old paper, scuffed marble, perfume that tried too hard to hide nerves. Patricia said hearings like this one weren't about emotion, but everyone in that room was vibrating with it. Marcus sat at the respondent's table, hair combed back too neatly, suit tailored, a size too hopeful. Beside him, Fleming whispered rehearsed lines about confusion, oversight, emotional distress. I watched them like I'd watch a contractor cutting the wrong board, knowing he'd blame the tape measure next. Patricia leaned toward me. Remember, she said, truth doesn't need volume, just clarity. Judge Harris entered without ceremony. Her gavel barely touched the block before the room fell still. Case 22-3041, George versus Hale. It hit me then how strange it was, seeing our names divided by a versus. Once those letters had been an ampersand. Patricia stood. Your Honor, we're asking for confirmation of the emergency freeze, recognition of a constructive trust over the $9 million lottery winnings, and sanctions for fraudulent concealment and perjury under oath. Fleming rose, voice smooth as lacquer. Your Honor, my client acknowledges an administrative error in disclosure. There was no malicious intent. The ticket was purchased independently. He panicked when he realized how life-changing the amount was. Panicked into hiring a $500 an hour lawyer and setting up a shell trust? Patricia asked. Fleming pretended not to hear. Judge Harris's brow tightened. Mr. Hale, approach. He stood, shoulders squared but trembling. Yes, Your Honor? Why did you register the winnings under your former surname? He hesitated. It was habit. And why is the trust named TL Foundation? He froze again. Those are just initials I liked. Tessa Lynn's initials, Patricia said. Her voice was calm, but it sliced the air clean. Fleming interjected. Objection. Irrelevant to the asset issue. Overruled, Harris said. It speaks to motive. The silence that followed was the kind that makes every breath sound criminal. Patricia began her sequence step by step like a foreman reading a blueprint of deceit. Exhibit A, she said, placing the spiral notebook on the stand. 7 years of identical numbers, Ms. George's handwriting. October entry, her initials beside the sequence that matched the winning ticket. Exhibit B, she continued. Text message from Ms. George to Mr. Hale on October 17th at 3:12 p.m., reminding him to purchase their set before the 5 p.m. cutoff. Claim record time stamped 3:46 p.m. Exhibit C. She held up the lottery letter. Prize confirmation dated October 17th, 2 weeks before Mr. Hale filed separation paperwork, filed under his maiden name, omitting the prize from financial disclosures. Each exhibit landed like a hammer strike, steady, final. Patricia didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. The facts were loud enough. When she was done, Judge Harris turned to Fleming. Response? Fleming's argument deflated before it began. Your Honor, while appearances may suggest impropriety, we must also consider emotional turmoil. Winning that sum can distort judgment. Fraud isn't a symptom of excitement, the judge said. Marcus spoke up then, unprompted. It wasn't fraud, he said. It was fear. Lou's comfortable in small spaces. She doesn't want more. I thought if I shared it, she'd resent me. The words landed like cheap insulation. Soft, full of air, meant to look solid. Patricia didn't even look at him. Your Honor, my client worked construction. She knows more about foundations than most. What Mr. Hale calls fear, this court should recognize as greed. The courtroom's air changed. Even Fleming couldn't hide his discomfort. Judge Harris reviewed her notes for what felt like an hour. When she finally spoke, it wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Mr. Hale, you not only concealed a significant marital-style asset, you did so with calculated intent. You used shared sentimental dates to claim the winnings, lied on sworn disclosures, and created a trust under your girlfriend's name. She paused. That's not panic. That's planning. Marcus tried again. Please, Your Honor. She cut him off. Don't! Her gavel came down once. The court affirms the asset freeze. All disbursements of the $9 million prize are to be held in escrow under this court's supervision. Further, pending confirmation of constructive trust, preliminary distribution is as follows. 85% to Ms. George, 15% to Mr. Hale. Sanctions for perjury and concealment to be imposed upon final judgment. Ms. Gonzalez, prepare findings for signature. Mr. Fleming, advise your client to retain criminal counsel. Patricia's pen scratched once, sealing his fate in ink. Judge Harris turned to me briefly. Ms. George, I suggest you start thinking about what accountability looks like when the money's finally yours. It will test you as much as it tested him. Her words lingered long after she left the bench. Marcus sat frozen, face pale, lips parted like he might still find a script to fix this. When Fleming packed his briefcase, Marcus didn't move. As the bailiff dismissed the room, I stood. My knees were shaking, but I felt grounded in a way I hadn't in months. Patricia placed a hand on my arm. He'll appeal. They always do. But even if he tries, he'll lose. Perjury leaves a paper trail louder than any argument. Outside, the air tasted cleaner. Marcus caught up with me on the courthouse steps. You don't have to do this, he said. His voice was hoarse. You're better than this. I turned to him slowly. You're right, I said. That's why I did it. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Tessa was waiting by the car at the curb, arms folded, sunglasses hiding everything. She didn't come to him. She just watched, calculating the math of loss in real time. Patricia leaned closer. Don't look back, she said. So I didn't. We walked toward the parking lot where my old truck waited. Dusty, dented, still mine. Patricia talked logistics, filings, escrow procedures, tax coordination. Her words blurred into a rhythm I knew well. Measure twice, cut once, build steady. When she finished, she looked at me. You okay? I thought about what okay meant. Not happy, not healed, just level. I'm stable, I said, and that's more than I was. Patricia smiled, brief but real. That's the foundation of everything. That night, I sat alone on the back porch with a beer I didn't finish. The air was heavy with summer's last breath, the kind that made the wood creak beneath me like the house itself was exhaling. $9 million sat frozen in some account, with both our names attached. But I felt richer than I had in years, because for once, the quiet wasn't lying. When the final ruling came down, 2 weeks later, Patricia called me before sunrise. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the grin she was trying to hide. Yeah. For a long second, I didn't speak. The coffee in my mug went cold while I stared at the half-built sunroom I'd never gotten around to finishing. It was just framing and daylight now. Bare, honest, almost beautiful. 85%, I repeated quietly. 7.65 million, Patricia said, before taxes. I laughed, short and disbelieving. Guess I don't have to worry about truck payments anymore. No, she said, but I'd still keep the old one. Remind yourself how you got here. The press found the story before noon. Construction foreman wins fraud case against ex-boyfriend over $9 million lottery windfall. By afternoon, a reporter was calling my business line asking for comment. I hung up. I didn't want to be a headline. I wanted to rebuild. Patricia's assistant texted screenshots of the coverage anyway. There was a photo of Marcus leaving the courthouse, head down, tie crooked, the caption merciless. Greed costs man millions, facing charges. Another one showed Tessa outside her office, sunglasses hiding tears, her statement reading, I had no idea about the money. She was lying, of course, but the world already decided who it believed. I met Tommy and his wife that night at the bar near the job site. He slid a beer across to me, nodding toward the TV over the counter, where the news ticker ran the story again. Cheers to poetic justice, he said. His wife added, cheers to good lawyers. I clinked my glass against theirs. And to not being bought with a truck. They laughed, but I felt something heavier under the sound, relief that didn't know where to settle. Because justice, as Patricia had warned me, wasn't joy, it was gravity. It didn't lift you, it pinned you to what was real. 2 days later, Marcus called. I didn't answer the first time. The second time, curiosity got the better of me. Lou, he said, voice cracked and unfamiliar. Can we talk? No, I said. He hesitated. I'm not asking for money. I wanted to say I never meant for it to go this far. You meant for it to go exactly this far, I said. You just didn't expect the floor to give out. He was quiet for a moment, then said, Tessa left. She said she couldn't handle the attention. The comments online are brutal. Yeah, I said. Turns out people prefer carpenters to con artists. He exhaled like he wanted sympathy. You could have split it evenly. You didn't have to destroy me. I stared out at the frame of the sunroom, catching the last of the afternoon light. You destroyed yourself, I said. I just stopped holding the ladder. When I hung up, I blocked his number. Patricia handled the disbursement paperwork. After taxes, it came out to just under $6.3 million. She set up a trust for me, one with my name on it. No initials that didn't belong, no secrets. I bought out the mortgage on the house, paid the crew double on the last project we finished that fall, and sent a cashier's check to Tommy's wife with a note that said, for bail money, just in case you ever do want to slash someone's tires. She sent back a photo of herself holding the check with the caption, tempting. For months, people asked what it felt like, to win by losing everything first. I never had an easy answer. Sometimes it felt like silence finally earning its keep. Sometimes it felt like sawdust in my lungs, familiar and grounding. And sometimes, late at night, it felt like a kind of grief that didn't want to leave but didn't know how to stay. Because what Marcus took wasn't just money. He took the version of me that believed love meant building something together without checking the receipts. But he also gave me something back, clarity. And clarity, I've learned, is more expensive than gold. One afternoon, months later, I drove past the courthouse again. There was a chill in the air, the kind that makes your breath visible. A for sale sign leaned against the curb outside Marcus's old apartment complex. Rumor was he'd sold most of what he owned to pay legal fees. A small part of me wanted to stop, to look him in the eye and say thank you for teaching me what foundations shouldn't look like. But instead, I just rolled down my window and let the wind carry the thought away. That night, I stood in the nearly finished sunroom. The walls were up. The skylight framed a patch of sky that looked almost unreal. I'd done the work myself, measured, leveled, nailed every board into place. For once, there was no one left to steal the credit. I poured myself a glass of wine and whispered, to quiet things that finally make sense. Outside, the world moved on, slow, steady, unglamorous, just the way I like it.